The signal came through at 0347 hours, cutting through the silence of deep space like a scream. Captain Taman was in his quarters, reviewing star charts for the next survey sector. When the communication console lit up his room with red emergency lighting, he was already moving before his mind fully processed what the color meant. The bridge of the UES Retribution was quiet when he arrived. Only G1 was on duty, her fingers dancing across the tactical console as she tried to clean up the signal. The sound that filled the bridge made Taman's stomach turn. It wasn't words at first, just sounds, crying, breaking, the kind of noise that living things make when they know they're about to die. "How far?" Taman asked, sliding into his command chair. G1 didn't look away from her screen. 47 light-years. Threshold Prime, Outer Rim Colony. "The signal is 3 days old by the time it reached us." Taman closed his eyes for a moment. 3 days of whatever was making those sounds. 3 days of dying. The distress call finally resolved into something like language. The translation software struggled with it, the words coming out broken and desperate. The speakers called themselves Velans. Their world was being attacked. They had no weapons. No defenses. They were dying. "Please, someone help. Anyone." Sun Dashmi arrived on the bridge next, her engineering uniform half-fastened. She'd clearly run from her quarters. "I heard it in the corridors," she said. The whole ship heard it. That was true. The Retribution was a small vessel, only 43 crew members. In deep space, everyone knew everyone's business. By now, every person on board would know about the distress call. They would be waiting to see what their captain decided. Heian Wu came through the bridge doors, carrying his medical kit. Even though no one had called for him, that was just like him. Always prepared. Always assuming the worst. "How bad?" he asked. "Bad," Juan said. She pulled up visual data on the main screen. It wasn't much, just static images transmitted with the distress call. But it was enough. Structures that looked like they were made of crystal, shattered and burning. Bodies that might have been made of glass or diamond, broken into pieces. And everywhere, moving through the destruction like a dark tide, were the attackers, the Krith. Even their name sounded like something breaking. They looked like insects. If insects grew to the size of trucks and moved with horrible intelligence, the images showed them pulling Velan civilians from collapsed buildings, dragging them toward massive ships that sat on the surface like metal mountains. The Velans in the images weren't fighting back. They couldn't. Their bodies weren't made for violence. Council responds. Taman asked. G1 shook her head. "I checked the Galactic network. The Council received the distress call 6 days ago. They're still in preliminary discussions about whether to investigate. 6 days. Taman felt something cold settle in his chest. 6 days of meetings while people died. It won't send help, Sunmi said quietly. The Velans aren't a council member species. And the Krith. I've read about them. They've hit 12 worlds in the last 5 years. The council knows. They just don't care enough to do anything about it. Dong Heian arrived on the bridge with Bora right behind him. They were the Retribution's ground specialists, trained for first contact and planetary survey work. They looked at the images on the screen. And Taman watched their expressions change from confusion to understanding to something harder. We're 47 light-years away, Biora said. If we leave now, it'll take us 6 days at maximum jump speed. 12 days total since they sent the call, Donghain added. If they're even still alive? The bridge was silent. Everyone knew what they were thinking. The Retribution wasn't a military ship. They were explorers, scientists. They had weapons, because every human ship in deep space had weapons, but they were designed for defense. For pirates or small threats? Not for a war, but they were also human. And humans had a very specific reaction to hearing someone scream for help. Tay-Min stood up from his command chair. Sunmi, I need maximum jump speed. Strip power from everything except life support and engines. Kuwan, send a message back to Earth Command. Tell them what we're doing. Tell them we're not asking for permission. Captain G1 said carefully, if we do this, we go into an active conflict zone without authorization, we could lose our commission. The ship could be impounded. We could all face charges. Taman looked at each of them. His crew, his responsibility. I know. If anyone wants to object, speak now. I'll note it in the log. No one spoke. We're not doing this to be kind, Taman said. I want everyone to understand that. We're not going to Threshold Prime to have diplomatic talks or to negotiate. We're going because something out there is hunting people who can't fight back. And I don't care if they're human or alien or made of crystal. I don't care if they're in the council or not. When someone is screaming for help, we answer. He sat back down, his hands steady on the armrests. But we're also going to make sure that whatever is doing this understands something very important. Earth is a death world. We grew up fighting everything that tried to kill us. We got good at it. We got so good at it that we ran out of things to fight except each other. The Krith think they're predators. They're about to learn what real predators look like. Sonmi was already working on the engines. Gi-Wan sent the message to Earth Command, knowing the response wouldn't reach them for weeks. Hyan-Wu went to prepare the medical bay. Donghan and Bora headed to the armory. The Retribution turned in space, its navigation systems plotting the jump to Threshold Prime. In the command chair, Taman listened to the distress call one more time. The crying, the breaking, the desperate plea for someone, anyone, to help. They were coming. Not with kindness, not with mercy, but they were coming. And the Krith would learn what it meant to catch the attention of Earth's children. The jump to Threshold Prime took 6 days, and every day felt like a year. The crew of the Retribution worked in shifts, preparing for what they might find. In the armory, weapons that hadn't been fired in months were cleaned and tested. In engineering, Sunmi pushed the ship's systems harder than they were designed to go. In medical, Hyan-Wu stockpiled supplies and tried not to think about how many body bags he might need. When they finally dropped out of jump space at the edge of the Threshold Prime system, the first thing they saw was death. Velen's ships floated in the darkness like broken glass. Some were still mostly intact, their crystalline hulls reflecting starlight in rainbow patterns. Others were shattered completely, fields of debris that sparkled as the Retribution's sensors swept over them. Ji-Wan ran the numbers and felt her throat tighten. 43 ships. Thousands of Valons, dead in the cold of space. Life signs on the planet? Taman asked, his voice flat. Gi-Wan worked her console, filtering through the interference from the debris field. Reading some, not many. Maybe tens of thousands, where there should be millions. The Retribution moved deeper into the system, and the destruction became clearer. Threshold Prime's orbital defense platforms hung silent and dark, their power cores ripped out. The planet itself showed massive scars where entire cities had been torn from the surface. From orbit, they looked like wounds in the planet's skin. Where are the Krith? Dong Hyan asked. Outer system, Ji-Wan said, highlighting a cluster of contacts near the system's gas giant. 17 ships. Big ones. They're harvesting resources from the moons. They're not even staying to guard what they took, Biora said quietly. They think it's over. They think they won. Taman studied the tactical display. The Krith fleet was massive, easily 100 times the Retribution's size. But they were far away, focused on their harvesting. That gave him time. Take us down. Find wherever the survivors are hiding. The descent through Threshold Prime's atmosphere was rough. The planet's weather systems were damaged, throwing storms across the surface where the Krith had torn into the ground. Sunmi kept the ship steady, guiding them toward the largest concentration of Velen life signs. They were underground. Deep in a cave system that the planet's original colonists had used for mining, the landing team consisted of Dong Hyan, Bora, Hyan-Wu, and 6 others. They wore light armor and carried survey equipment modified to work as weapons. As they descended into the caves, their helmet lights cut through darkness that felt heavy and wrong. They found the Velens a kilometer. Underground, the refugee camp was heartbreaking in its desperation. Velens huddled together in small groups, their crystalline bodies cracked and dull from stress. They had set up makeshift shelters using broken equipment and torn fabric. When the humans appeared, many of them didn't even react. They were too tired, too broken. A Velen elder approached them slowly. Her body was translucent, shot through with veins of color that pulsed weakly. She carried a translation device, one of the old council-issued models. When she spoke, the device turned her words into flat, emotionless standard. "You came," she said. "We did not think anyone would come." Donghan removed his helmet, wanting her to see his face. "We came as fast as we could. How many of you are left?" 40,000. Perhaps less by now. We lose more each day to injuries and sickness. Before the Krith came, we were 3 million. The elder's voice through the translator didn't change, but her body dimmed slightly. Grief, Dong Hein realized. That was what grief looked like for her people. Bo-Ra was already scanning the caves, counting the survivors, assessing their condition. Most of them were injured. All of them were traumatized. "We need to get you off this planet," she said. "Our ship can't carry everyone, but we can call for help. Earth will send transport ships." The elder's body flickered in a way that might have been surprise. "Earth, you are the humans. The Deathworlders." "Yes," Dong Hien said. "I'm Dong Hien. This is Biora and Hoyanwu. We're here to help. The Krith will return," the elder said. "They left to harvest the outer moons, but they will come back. They always come back to make sure nothing escaped. When they find you here, they will kill you too." Huanwu knelt beside a group of injured Villans, his medical scanner already working. "Let them try," he said absently, focused on his readings. "We're not as easy to kill as they might think." The elder led them deeper into the caves, to a chamber where the Velens had set up their communication equipment. As they walked, she told them everything. The Krith had arrived 3 weeks ago without warning. They descended on the planet in massive ships and began harvesting immediately. Harvesting, that was the word she used. Not killing. Not hunting. Harvesting like the Velens were crops, the Krith used the Velens for everything. Food, building materials. The Velens' silicon-based bodies could be processed into hull plating for the Krith ships. Their organs could be refined into fuel. Nothing was wasted. The Krith were efficient predators. "How many worlds have they done this to?" Biora asked. 12, the elder said. "That we know of. The Galactic Council has records of the attacks. They discuss intervention. They debate and study and hold meetings. But they do nothing. The Krith are too many, too dangerous. It is easier to let them feed on species like us. Species without weapons. Species without friends." In the communication chamber, Ji-Wan's voice came through their helmet radios. "Captain wants to know everything about the Krith. Numbers, biology, ship configurations, anything that could be a weakness." Dong Han looked at the elder. "Can you tell us about them? Everything you learned while they were here?" The elder's body brightened slightly. "Hope. Yes, we observed them. We recorded everything we could. If it helps you escape, if it helps you warn others, then at least our deaths will mean something." "We're not running," Biora said. She was looking at a datapad, reviewing the tactical information. "And we're not just warning people." The elder didn't understand at first. Then Dong Hien explained. And her body brightened so much it hurt to look at her directly. Back on the Retribution, Taemin reviewed the data the Velens had provided. 17 Krith ships, each one carrying between 50,000 and 200,000 drones. The drones were controlled by a central intelligence on each ship, coordinated through pheromone signals. The ships themselves were biological, grown rather than built. Nearly impossible to damage with conventional weapons, G-1 stood beside him, reading the same data. "Captain, we can't fight this. Even if we could damage one ship, there are 16 more. We need to evacuate the survivors and call for help." "I know," Taemin said. "That's what we should do." Gi-1 heard something in his voice, but Taemin pulled up the records the Velens had shared. 12 worlds. Dozens of millions of dead. And the Galactic Council knew. They had always known. They just didn't care enough to do anything about it. "We're not leaving," he said. "Not yet. What are we doing?" "Something that should have been done a long time ago," Taemin said. "Get me Sunmi and Youngseek. We're going to teach the Krith why you don't hunt Deathworlders' neighbors." Youngseek had been a xenobiologist for 8 years, studying alien life forms across dozens of worlds. He'd analyzed everything from microbes to massive creatures that drifted through gas giants. But he'd never studied anything with the intention of finding the best way to kill it. Until now, the Krith biology data the Velans had provided was extensive. 3 weeks of observation had given them detailed information about how the swarm functioned. Youngseek spread the data across his laboratory screens, his fingers moving quickly as he searched for weaknesses. "They're not really individuals," he explained to Taemin and Sunmi. "Each drone is more like a cell in a larger body. They communicate through pheromones, chemical signals that tell them what to do. The central intelligence on each ship produces the signals and broadcasts them. Without those signals, the drones don't know how to function." "So if we destroy the signal source," Taemin asked, "they'd be confused." But here's the interesting part. Youngseek pulled up a molecular diagram. The pheromone system is complex. Different chemicals mean different things. Territorial markers, breeding signals, danger warnings, attack commands. And the drones are hardwired to respond to these chemicals instantly. They can't ignore them. Sunmi leaned forward, her engineering mind already seeing the possibility. "We could make our own pheromones." "Exactly. If we can synthesize the right chemicals and introduce them into the planet's atmosphere, we could override the Krith's natural signals. We could tell them anything we want." "How long would it take to make enough?" Taemin asked. Youngseek and Sunmi looked at each other. 3 days, Sunmi said. "Maybe 4. We'd need to convert the ship's entire chemical processing system, but we could do it." "Do it," Taemin said. "And make sure the message we send them is clear." While Youngseek and Sunmi worked on the chemical weapon, Nari worked on a different kind of attack. She was a linguist, brought on the Retribution's crew to help with first contact situations. She'd never expected to use her skills to drive an alien species insane. The Krith communicated through sound as well as smell. High-frequency calls that humans couldn't hear without equipment. Nari had recordings of these calls from the Velan data. She spent 2 days analyzing them, breaking them down into their component parts, understanding what each frequency and pattern meant. Then she started to build something new. "It's beautiful in a horrible way," she explained to G1. "I'm taking their communication frequencies and layering them wrong. Imagine if every word you heard was slightly off. Not enough to be meaningless, but enough to be wrong. Danger signals mixed with feeding calls. Territory markers combined with mating sounds. It'll drive them crazy. Will it work?" Jiwan asked. Nari smiled, but there was nothing happy in it. "The human brain can't handle certain kinds of sensory input. White noise at specific frequencies can cause panic. Infrasound can create feelings of dread. Every species has sounds that break them. I found the Kriths." On the 3rd day, the Krith fleet began moving back toward Threshold Prime. The Retribution's sensors tracked them. 17 massive bioships leaving the outer system and heading for the planet. G1 calculated their arrival time. "For hours." "We're not ready," Sunmi said. She was covered in chemical residue from the processing work, her hair tied back, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "We need another day." "We don't have another day," Taemin said. He looked at the tactical display, seeing the Krith fleet moving closer. 17 ships, millions of drones, one small human vessel. "We work with what we have." The plan was insane. Everyone on the bridge knew it, but no one suggested running. When the Krith fleet arrived in orbit, they found the Retribution waiting for them. The small human ship floated above Threshold Prime like a challenge. To the Krith's collective intelligence, it seemed like prey behavior. The cornered animal making a final stand before the inevitable. They were so very wrong. The Krith ships moved into attack formation, surrounding the Retribution. On the bridge, Taemin watched them close in. He could feel his heart beating steady and slow. He'd been afraid before the decision was made. Now that they were committed, the fear was gone. There was only the mission. "Juan, you have firing authorization," he said calmly. "Target the atmosphere, not the ships." "Firing," G1 said. The Retribution's missile tubes opened, and 6 projectiles streaked away from the ship. The Krith fleet barely noticed them. The missiles weren't targeting any ships. They passed through the fleet and entered Threshold Prime's upper atmosphere, where they detonated in brilliant chemical blooms. Sunmi had designed the delivery system perfectly. The chemicals spread through the atmosphere in expanding clouds carried by the planet's air currents. Within hours, they would cover the entire world. Young-Seek synthesized pheromones mixed with the air, creating a new smell that every Krith drone on the planet would detect. The smell told them something simple and terrible. This is another Queen's territory. On the surface of Threshold Prime, 50,000 Krith drones were still processing the Velen harvest. They'd been left behind when the main fleet went to the outer system. Now, as the chemical clouds reached them, their programming kicked in. Territorial defense. Protect the Queen's territory from invaders. The problem was that the chemicals made them think. Their own ships were the invaders. The Krith began attacking themselves in orbit. The fleet's collective intelligence realized something was wrong. The drones on the surface were fighting each other, tearing apart the harvesting equipment, destroying their own processing facilities. The intelligence sent new signals, trying to override whatever was happening. But Young-Seek's chemicals were stronger. More immediate, the drones couldn't ignore them. "They're confused," Juan reported, watching the sensor data. "The fleet is breaking formation." "Good," Taman said. "Now give them something else to think about." "Nari, start the broadcast." Nari's fingers moved across her console, and the Retribution began transmitting on every Krith frequency. The sound that filled the space around Threshold Prime wasn't quite language. It was something worse. Familiar patterns, twisted wrong. Commands that contradicted each other. Frequencies that made the Krith's biological receivers fire randomly. The 17 ships began to descend toward the planet in chaos. Some were trying to flee. Others were attempting to establish order with their surface drones. All of them were confused, angry, their collective intelligence fracturing under the sensory assault. "Now we send the second message," Taman said. He opened a channel on the Galactic Emergency Band, broadcasting on every frequency the Council monitored. His message was simple. "This is Captain Taman of the United Earth ship Retribution. We are currently engaged in defensive operations at Threshold Prime against the Krith swarm. We have documented evidence of 12 previous attacks by this species against peaceful civilizations. Attacks that the Galactic Council has ignored. Earth will no longer accept this. We are intervening. To any council members listening, this is what happens when you force others to do your job for you." He closed the channel and looked at his crew. They were watching him with expressions he recognized. Not fear, not doubt. Something harder. "Something ready. Take us down," he said. "We're not done yet." The Retribution descended through Threshold Prime's atmosphere with its weapon systems active and its crew ready for war. Below them, the planet's surface was chaos. Krith drones fought each other in massive swarms, their territorial instincts overriding any sense of coordination. The bioships that had landed were under attack from their own ground forces. Massive structures being torn apart by the very creatures they had carried. Dong Haiyan stood in the Retribution's armory, checking his rifle for the 3rd time. It was an old habit from his training days. Check everything 3 times because the 4th time might be when you need it to work. Around him, the landing team was gearing up. They wore light combat armor, the kind designed for exploration and survey work. It wasn't military grade. It wouldn't stop much. But it was better than nothing. Remember, he said to the team, "We're not trying to win a war. We're sending a message. Make every shot count. Make every move deliberate. We want them to remember this." Biora was checking the explosive charges they'd be carrying. Small devices normally used for mining surveys or clearing debris. Now they'd be used to collapse Krith nest structures. "How many Krith are we expecting down there?" she asked. "Thousands," Dong Haiyan said. "Maybe tens of thousands." They're fighting each other right now, but that won't last forever. Once they figure out we're the real threat, they'll turn on us. Good, someone said from the back of the armory. It was one of the survey crew, a young man named Hyanwu's assistant. He was loading ammunition with hands that shook slightly. I want them to know who did this to them. The retribution landed 3 kilometers from the largest Krith concentration. The ship's external cameras showed the destruction clearly. Krith drones were everywhere, their insect-like bodies moving in confused patterns. Some were fighting. Others were trying to repair damaged structures. All of them were responding to the chemical signals still saturating the atmosphere. Taemin's voice came. Over the landing team's communications, you have authorization to engage. Primary targets are the nest structures and any Krith that attack you directly. Secondary targets are the bioships. We need to make sure they can't leave and spread word about what's happening here. Dong Hyan led his team out of the Retribution's cargo bay. The air on Threshold Prime smelled wrong, thick with the chemicals Youngseek had created and the biological scent of the Krith. It was the smell of a slaughterhouse mixed with a chemical plant. Through their helmet filters, it was bearable. Barely, they moved toward the first nest structure. It's a massive mound of organic material that the Krith had built from processed Velen bodies and local minerals. It rose 30 meters into the air, covered in holes where drones entered and exited. Normally, it would be heavily defended. Now, it was in chaos. Drones were attacking each other at the entrances, pulling each other down. Biting and tearing, Bura placed her charges at the structure's base while the rest of the team provided cover. The Krith barely noticed them. They were too busy fighting themselves. When the charges detonated, the entire structure collapsed inward, crushing hundreds of drones and blocking the exits for thousands more trapped inside. Target down, Bura reported. Moving to the next location, they worked methodically, moving from structure to structure. The Krith began to notice them eventually. Small groups of drones would break away from the larger fights and charge the humans. That's when the team learned what Earth weapons could do to an alien biology that never encountered them. Dung-Hyan single quotes, right-fired kinetic rounds, simple metal projectiles moving at high velocity. Against Krith armor, they were devastating. The drones' exoskeletons shattered. Their biological systems couldn't handle the hydrostatic shock. One shot was usually enough to drop a drone. 2 shots were certain. The Krith had never faced weapons like this. In their attacks on other worlds, they'd encountered energy weapons, the kind the Galactic Council preferred. Those weapons were designed to disable, to minimize damage. They could be defended against with proper shielding. But there was no shield against a lump of metal moving faster than sound. No defense, except not being hit. And the humans were very good at hitting what they aimed at, back on the Retribution. G1 coordinated the orbital strikes. The ship's weapons weren't designed for atmospheric combat, but Sunmi had made modifications. Now they could target the Krith bioships with precision. Each strike was carefully calculated, hitting engine sections and control areas. The goal wasn't to destroy the ships immediately. It was to cripple them, to make sure they couldn't leave. Bioship 7 is attempting to take off, G1 reported. Permission to engage? Granted, Taemin said. Make sure it doesn't make orbit. The Retribution's main gun fired, and a beam of focused energy cut through the atmosphere. It struck the bioship's propulsion section, and the entire structure shuddered. The ship tried to lift off anyway, its biological engines straining. It rose 50 meters before the damaged sections failed. The ship fell back to the surface and didn't move again. Hyanwu set up a medical station near the landing zone. He'd expected to be treating injured humans. Instead, he found himself studying the few Krith drones that had been captured alive. They were terrifying up close, all sharp edges and alien geometry. But they were also fragile in ways he hadn't expected. Their biology is optimized for the swarm, he explained to Taemin, over the communication link. Individually, they're not that strong. They rely on numbers and coordination. Take away the coordination, and they're just confused insects. Can you keep them confused? Taemin asked. For now. But the chemical interference will fade eventually. When it does, they'll reorganize. We need to finish this before that happens. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 72 hours. The humans worked in shifts, catching sleep when they could, always maintaining pressure on the Krith forces. They collapsed nest structures, disabled bioships, and eliminated any drones that showed signs of coordinated behavior. It was brutal work, exhausting, but effective by the end of the third day. The Krith presence on Threshold Prime was reduced to scattered groups of confused drones. The 17 bioships were all grounded and damaged beyond repair. Thousands of Krith were dead. Tens of thousands were trapped in collapsed nests or wandering aimlessly, their pheromone communication disrupted beyond recovery. The surviving Krith tried to flee. They used escape pods, small biological craft that were designed for evacuation. They launched from the grounded bioships and accelerated toward the system's edge, hoping to reach jump distance. Taman watched them go on the tactical display. 17 ships had become 53 escape pods, maybe 1,000 Krith total, running for their lives. Should we pursue? G1 asked. Tay Dashman thought about it. He thought about the Velans hiding in the caves, about the 12 other worlds that Krith had destroyed, about the Galactic Council's endless meetings while people died. Yes, he said. Pursue and destroy. No survivors. No witnesses to tell the other swarms what happened here. I want the Krith to find this place and wonder what could have done this to them. The Retribution hunted down the escape pods one by one. It took 6 more days, tracking them through the outer system, running them down as they desperately tried to escape. G1 kept precise records of each intercept. The time, the location, the method of destruction, everything documented when the last escape pod was destroyed. Taman authorized a final transmission to the Galactic Council. This one included video footage, close-up images of Krith biology being analyzed, captured drones being interrogated for information about other swarm locations, the systematic destruction of the bioships, the pursuit and elimination of the survivors. The message he attached was simple. The Krith swarm at Threshold Prime has been neutralized. Estimated casualties, 200,000 Krith drones, 17 bioships, all command intelligence destroyed. Human casualties, 0. The Galactic Council failed to protect the Valines. Earth did not. This is what we do to species that prey on the helpless. Consider this a warning. The message was sent on every channel, public and private. Emergency bands and diplomatic frequencies. Taman wanted everyone to see it. He wanted the galaxy to understand that something had changed. 3 months after the Threshold Prime incident, Taman stood before the Galactic Council. The chamber was enormous, built to accommodate hundreds of different species. The air was carefully balanced for different atmospheric requirements, creating weird currents and temperature zones throughout the space. Representatives from 63 species watched, and from their various platforms and podiums. The Velans had been relocated to a council-protected world called Haven's Edge. They were safe now, under official protection. But they'd spent 2 weeks testifying before various council committees, describing what had happened at Threshold Prime, describing what the humans had done. 1. Velan Elder had said something that was now being repeated across the galaxy. They saved us. But they did not do it with kindness. They did it with hate for what was done to us. We are grateful. We are also afraid. The council chamber was silent as Taman waited for the charges to be read. There were many. Unauthorized military action in non-Earth space. Destruction of a sapient species without council approval. Violation of 47 different peace treaties and non-aggression pacts. Use of chemical weapons. Broadcasting classified military actions on public channels. The list went on. Standing beside Taman were G1, Sunmi, Haiyan Wu, and Dong Haiyan. The rest of his crew was watching from Earth, the trial being broadcast across every human world. The decision made here would affect humanity's place in the galaxy for generations. Finally, the council speaker, a being that looked like flowing water held in a transparent membrane, spoke. The translator turned its words into standard. Captain, Taman of Earth, You and your crew have been charged with crimes against galactic peace. How do you respond to these charges? Taman had prepared a speech. He'd worked on it with Earth's diplomatic corps, refining every word to be politically acceptable. He'd memorized it perfectly. Now, standing in the chamber, looking at the representatives of dozens of species, he decided not to use it. I don't apologize, he said simply. The Krith were a known threat. You had evidence of 12 previous attacks. You knew they were hunting and harvesting sapient beings. You did nothing. You talked, you debated, you formed committees. While you were doing that, 3 million Velons died. So no, I don't apologize for stopping it. The chamber erupted. Some species were outraged. Others seemed approving. Velen's representative, the same elder Donghain had met in the caves, stood and spoke. The humans saved my people when no one else would. If they must be punished for that, then your laws are cruel. A representative from the Thaxian Confederation, a species that looked like clusters of floating crystals, responded. The issue is not that they helped. The issue is how they helped. They committed genocide. The Krith, whatever their crimes, were sapient beings. The humans exterminated them without trial, without mercy, without hesitation. The Krith were actively killing people, Jiwan said, speaking for the first time. We didn't attack them in their home system. We didn't hunt them down across the galaxy. We stopped them from murdering an entire civilization. If that's a crime, then I'm guilty too. The council speaker raised its appendages, calling for silence. The question before us is not whether the Krith's actions were wrong. They clearly were. The question is whether individual species can take military action without council authorization. If we allow this precedent, we invite chaos. That's when Ambassador Sang-Ho stood up. He'd been sitting in the Earth delegation area, waiting for his moment. He was older than Taman, gray-haired and experienced. He'd been Earth's voice in the council for 10 years. Now he spoke with the weight of his entire planet behind him. The council is correct that this sets a precedent, Sang-Ho said. But let's be clear about what precedent we're discussing. You invited Earth to join the galactic community 20 years ago. We accepted, believing that civilization meant protecting the weak from the strong. We were wrong about what you meant. But you were also wrong about us. He walked to the center of the chamber, his human frame small among the various alien bodies. We are not kind. We are not gentle. We come from a planet that tried to kill us every day of our evolution. We survived by being better predators than anything that hunted us. We built our civilization through thousands of years of warfare against each other. We know what violence looks like. We know what it costs. Is this a threat? The Thaxian representative asked. No, Sang-Ho said. It's a statement of fact. Earth wants to be your friend, your ally, your trading partner. But if you let monsters hunt the innocent while you debate and delay, we will be your conscience, whether you want us to be or not. We will not ask permission to stop genocides. We will not wait for council authorization to save lives. We will act. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then a representative from the Drin hierarchy, a reptilian species known for their military traditions, spoke. The humans are correct. We have been cowards. We have allowed predatory species to exist because it was easier than fighting them. Perhaps we needed someone to remind us what civilization actually means. Or perhaps, the Thaxian said, we needed a reminder that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Today, they hunt the Krith. Tomorrow, who will they decide deserves extermination? Taman stepped forward. You want to know who will hunt? Ask yourselves this. Are you hunting anyone? Are you harvesting sapient beings? Are you enslaving civilizations? Are you committing genocide? No. Then you have nothing to fear from us. We don't attack people for being different. We attack them for being predators. The debate continued for hours. The council was deeply divided. Some species viewed humans as dangerous saviors, necessary but frightening. Others saw them as a threat to galactic order. A few, mostly species that had been victims of aggression themselves, supported Earth completely. In the end, the council reached a compromise. The charges against Timon and his crew were dropped, but with conditions. Earth would help establish a new branch of galactic peacekeeping. specifically designed to respond to existential threats against member and non-member species. Human military advisors would help train this force. The Council would fund it properly and give it authorization to act quickly when needed. In exchange, Earth agreed to work within the Council framework for future interventions. They wouldn't go rogue again, unless the Council failed to act in time, in which case all agreements were void. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. After the hearing, Taman and his crew returned to the Retribution. The ship had been repaired and restocked. They had new orders, resumed their exploration mission. Survey uncharted systems. Make first contact with new species. The work they'd been doing before Threshold Prime. But something had changed. As the Retribution left Council space and headed back into the unknown, Taman noticed how other ships reacted to them. They gave the human vessel more room, took longer routes to avoid crossing paths. When the Retribution hailed other ships, the responses were cautious, respectful. "They're afraid of us now," Jiwan said, watching a trader ship alter its course to stay farther away. "Good," Taman said. "Not because I want them to be afraid, but because fear means respect. It means they understand what we're capable of." In the galactic networks, the story of Threshold Prime had spread. Every species knew what had happened. The official reports were dry and factual, but the unofficial versions were more interesting. Stories about the Deathworlders who came to save the Velons, about the humans who fought the Krith without mercy, about Earth's response to seeing innocent people hunted. The Krith swarm had noticed too. Their other hives had found the remains at Threshold Prime. They'd seen what had been done to their forces, and they'd changed their behavior. Krith attacks on border worlds dropped to 0. They retreated to their core territories and stayed there, suddenly very careful about who they hunted. Other predatory species noticed. The message was clear. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and it protected the weak. 6 months after Threshold Prime, the Retribution received a new distress call. A mining colony under attack by pirates. Call was desperate, but not as terrible as the Velen signal had been. No genocide, just criminals being criminals. Taman looked at his crew. "Do we respond?" "Of course," G1 said. "That's what we do." "Not with kindness," Donghain added. Tay-Min smiled slightly. "No, not with kindness. But we respond. We always respond." The Retribution changed course, accelerating toward the new crisis. Behind them, the reputation of Earth's Deathworlders continued to grow. Stories spread through trade routes and diplomatic channels, whispered in stations and shouted in bars. The humans who respond to every call for help, just not with kindness, with something far more liable. The absolute certainty that anyone who preyed on the helpless would face creatures who were simply better at being predators. Earth's children had learned their lessons well on their violent world. Now the galaxy was learning those lessons too, and across the stars. Civilizations slept a little safer, knowing that somewhere out there, the Deathworlders were listening.